How many times have you acted purely on feelings, only to realize later that those feelings weren't reflecting reality? If you're nodding your head right now, this episode is for you. Follow and direct message us on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Like the show, leave a review, and share with a friend.
Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real-life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together.
Recognizing that feelings are not facts is important for so many reasons, but let's just talk about a few of them. Feelings are subjective interpretations. They are not objective reality. Emotions are temporary and changeable. Strong emotions can distort our thinking. And different people can feel differently about the same factual circumstance.
So, this distinction that we're making isn't about invalidating feelings. Emotions provide valuable information about our needs and values, but treating feelings as facts can lead to poorer decisions, unnecessary suffering, and relationship difficulties. Learning to acknowledge our feelings while also questioning their accuracy helps us navigate life with greater wisdom and emotional resilience. If you're struggling to understand the difference or how to distinguish or differentiate between those things, I would highly recommend seeing a therapist to help you work through some of that. I'm going to start off by telling a story that highlights some of these points that we're going to get into later. At a conference Elizabeth and I were attending, I was part of a breakout session. Well, I was facilitating a breakout session, and there were two people who were really struggling to communicate during this breakout session. And the context around this breakout session was using case scenarios to help learn how to implement some of the teaching material that had been discussed earlier in the day. And a person raised their hand and started discussing the issues that she was having around implementing some of these. And there were some factors and cultural nuances and considerations that she wasn't taking into consideration as she was trying to create this open space for what she was trying to accomplish. And so another participant asked her questions. He started asking her questions to get her moving in the right direction to help her understand what she wanted and why there was maybe a mismatch between what she wanted and what was actually happening. And I want to kind of give you a little bit more context about this conversation. The person who was having the difficulty was a smaller, older woman, and the person questioning was a very large, broad-shouldered, loud male. And his approach was actually very helpful. The questions he was asking her to help her understand and figure out her mismatch were very, very helpful. They were very valid questions, actually. Questions that I probably would have asked, except for he beat me to it. What was interesting about this situation was the way that this played out between these two individuals. You have a very tall, large, kind of boisterous, loud male uh, questioning a smaller framed, older female who is already feeling very inadequate about her role in her job, in her position. And so she's being vulnerable, bringing this vulnerability to this space, and only to have someone question her. So this is a situation that I was facilitating, and we did a couple of things to kind of work through and manage that situation, but it became a little bit heated for the other participants. In fact, one of them actually asked, "I bet this is not what you signed up for, is it?" And we kind of laughed about it, and I said, "Actually, this is stuff I live for." And then their eyes got big. It was awesome. So so it was a really uncomfortable situation for everyone involved. And the woman began to shrink back. She said, "I'm feeling defensive." Those were her words. "I'm feeling defensive. I need to step away." And twice during this interaction, we all took a step back. We did a couple of breathing exercises and we came back to the situation. But her immediate response was, I'm feeling defensive. I don't like the way this conversation is going. Later on, she told me that she was actually feeling bullied by this
Mm.
gentleman. And as I was as I was observing the body language of the other participants, I could tell that they were a little bit nervous. I don't know it was necessarily nervous because of what was happening so much as it was happening in front of an outsider, a stranger who is me. Uh, and it probably made some of them, I'm sure it made some of them feel a little bit uncomfortable. But it was very interesting to kind of watch the other participants and their responses and their reactions. So we eventually got to a place where we could talk about it, but it took a couple of minutes to get there. And the reason that I think this story is important is because it actually provides some background and an example of the tactical steps that we're going to talk about in find it when you find yourself in this situation, when perhaps you're feeling defensive or inadequate or vulnerable, and someone else's approach and trying to help you, the impact of that approach is can be very startling and very dysregulating. So yes, this is going to provide some perfect example for some tactical strategies in a situation like this.
I even listening to you sharing this story, and I was I wasn't in the room with you, but I was there. I heard about it right after, and I was wondering, were those people sitting next to each other? Were they across the room from each other? Like,
Mm,
what were some of the physical dynamics? Because as you're talking, I'm thinking about meetings I've been in where I've said something and I feel like I've been misunderstood. And it wasn't even by someone who had a physical presence
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
was overwhelming to me.
mm-hmm,
Just like I was feeling misunderstood. And so, like,
mm-hmm.
my feelings started to get in my way of what I had brought up. But I'm curious about the physical setup of this
Mm-hmm.
scenario because I think those things really do play into sometimes how we feel about things.
For sure. I think that if they were sitting even like across the room diagonal for each other, it would have been a little bit different. I think the situation would have looked a little bit differently, but they were sitting right beside each other in a small room.
Yeah.
And I mean, even just looking at them in my mind, I'm picturing them, and he is very large, sitting beside her, like could
Right.
swallow her whole in his arms, like that large. He's a large guy. It's over 6 feet. He was maybe 6'5".
Right.
Yeah, and she couldn't have been more than 5'2", five
And
three.
and this is at a conference that they're coming together. It's a unifying, connecting conference. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
a like, okay, we're getting together and we're going to be problem solving and we're bringing out issues in the group and we're pulling things
No.
apart. This is a supportive environment
Mm-hmm.
where what I was thinking about with me, it was also more of a collaborative team environment where we're all together, we're all problem solving per se around the same things,
Yeah,
yet we still sometimes have our feelings get in the way. So
right.
let's talk about some of the tactical things that we do. So you mentioned that this woman, she said, I'm feeling defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I was feeling misunderstood in the situation I was in. So acknowledging and labeling what we are feeling is so important. This woman said it out loud to the whole group, right?
Yeah, yeah, she did. And
She's
sometimes it's hard too because we don't necessarily have the verbiage, right,
right.
to be able to acknowledge that. And that becomes a little bit difficult. But she was in this situation, she was great. She said, I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling defensive. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not necessary for the whole group to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in my situation, I recognized and acknowledged in myself. I said, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I do was then I start like pushing my feet into the floor to kind of
Mm.
just bring myself back
Yeah.
because I didn't have that outward acknowledgement. There's been lots of other times where I have in meetings said, I'm feeling dysregulated. I'm
Yeah.
feeling overwhelmed. This happened a lot when I was on Zoom meetings during COVID. There would be a lot of emotion come up, and I would say something like, I'm I don't know what to do here. I'm feeling
Mm,
very overwhelmed. And when I would say that, you could almost feel the whole group just kind of like take a collective breath because other
yeah,
people feel the same ways.
they're feeling the same way. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I bet even in that room, other women or men, other people were
Uh-huh.
feeling the same way she was feeling. And so
Absolutely.
when we're dysregulated, when our nervous system starts to show up in a place where we're safe, it's collaborative environment, things
Mm-hmm.
like that, it's information for us. And so naming our feelings is super important in being able to take the next steps.
I am guessing too that must have been very disorienting because the whole purpose of that breakout session was to apply the knowledge that we had just learned through these case scenarios, and which doesn't sound like something that's really emotionally charged, but the case scenarios were actual examples. They were real life examples, maybe not necessarily part of each participant's life, but they were real life examples and brought up a lot of feelings in general. So I'm sure it was disorienting to be talking about these case examples and these case scenarios that touch on some real life examples, experiences that maybe some of the participants had, and to find yourself suddenly feeling defensive and dysregulated. I'm sure that was really hard for her. So, yeah, absolutely acknowledging and labeling your feelings and just being aware of your thoughts and how they're making you feel in that moment. So, an example there in that situation would have been like, I'm not prepared, or I don't know what's going on, or I'm feeling it. I'm feeling so inadequate. And I'm thinking that I am inadequate because I don't have the answers to the situation that I'm looking to for answers to. I don't know how to answer the questions that this
Mhm.
participant is asking me. And I think that's kind of where she was feeling some of that dysregulation, as he was asking her questions and she didn't know how to respond in that moment. I'm 100% sure that if she took 5 minutes, or if she was in a different situation, that she probably could have answered those questions, but probably being in front of everyone and having to answer those and already having this raw emotion surface was really hard. So just even being able to examine your own thoughts, uh, and recognizing that sometimes those thoughts can lead to some behaviors like withdrawing or decrease in confidence, and that's exactly what happened in this situation. She withdrew, she disengaged, and she didn't get her needs met. And I thought that that was really unfortunate. Now, I just want everyone to know that this had an okay ending. This is a very small part of the breakout session, right? That we're dissecting. It had an okay ending, but she withdrew, she disengaged, and you could kind of see her shrink in her seat. So even her body language changed at that time, and we took some steps to kind of reorganize our thoughts around the situation and what she was bringing into the room.
Before you go into some of those steps, I, this power of your thoughts and how your thoughts are making you feel, right? As you're talking about this situation again, I just keep thinking about lots of different scenarios where this shows up for us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's bigger in a group, right? Where we're in a meeting and we're with a lot of people, or we're in some type of breakout, or we're at a conference where it's a more people are more aware of what's going on. But this happens to us internally all the
All the
time,
time. All the time.
all the time, where we have some type of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think that it is the fact, or we think that it is
Mm-hmm.
true, instead of acknowledging, I have a feeling, and then taking a minute to consider what this feeling, like, or what these thoughts are making me feel, instead of stepping back and actually looking at the situation. So I guess I'm just trying to bring in more of like, this happens all the time. And this is just
Absolutely.
one scenario that we're really diving into.
For sure. And just to tag along with that, I want to acknowledge that those feelings or these thoughts, even this pattern of behavior probably did serve us. It does serve us well in some situations, right? There probably were situations in your life earlier on, or earlier in the day where this defense served a purpose and where it was important in terms of your survival, emotional survival, physical survival. That's where I would, not to get to therapy here, but that's where I would encourage seeing someone so you can kind of get to the root of all that and understand maybe some of that context to help you make decisions a little bit differently later on. So yeah, so recognizing that that had a place, but there's only a couple of ways that you can really recognize that that's not serving you, and I think one of them is by taking a step back.
I agree. That is really important to be able to take that step back and really consider all of those things and then choosing your thoughts intentionally and considering what thoughts serve you better and that you have a choice in your thoughts and you have a choice in how you're going to handle these things. And that's not invalidating what happened and it's not invalidating your feeling, but it's taking your feeling more as information and not as a fact. And just to go off of Rosemary's invitation to possibly seek therapy or other help, when I'm having a response regularly that doesn't match the situation, that is something that comes to therapy
Mm-hmm.
because those intense feelings, they're information.
Mm-hmm.
They are not facts. They are information that can help me become a better person. And that
A-
helps me it leads me to new feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to point out that so while this woman acknowledged her feelings, one of the feelings that she had that kind of brings this kind of full circle in our facts are not feelings was that she was being bullied. She said, I feel like I'm being bullied right now. She said this to me privately. And I 1000% understand why she felt that way. She wasn't actually being bullied in that situation. I don't think that anyone would have called it bullying in that situation. Uh, and so this is really tricky for me. I'm trying really hard to say from my perspective, she was not being bullied.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the feelings that were going on deep down inside of her was that she was being bullied. And so as an outsider, as an observer watching this, I there was no part of me that thought this woman is being bullied. I would not. I don't. Of course, I would. The breakout session would change immediately, right? There would be an end to the bullying if there really was bullying, if there was bullying going on in any breakout session, any situation that I'm a part of. And I didn't feel that need because it wasn't bullying. He was asking questions, but I definitely understand where she was coming from in feeling bullied. And so just to bring that back full circle, these are the feelings that she experienced, right? Being bullied, which of course I'm going to be defensive if I feel like I'm being bullied, right? That's very natural, very natural feeling and process and outcome of feeling like you're being bullied. And it wasn't what was actually happening.
Right.
Yeah.
As you're saying that, I too am thinking back at like how many scenarios do I have a response to? And I realize that that's not actually what's happening. I'm going to share, and
Hmm.
this is a totally different circumstance, but I think all of these things apply.
Mm.
My daughter posted something on Instagram, and the caption that she wrote, like I brought up a feeling in me that I was like, I took a little bit of offense to it, right? And I'm
Mm.
on the phone with my son and I said something he asked how this event went because my daughter and I were together. And I said, I shared my feeling of offense. And he said, oh, I didn't take it that way at all. I thought she had a great time and this was a wonderful thing. And I was like, man, my feelings are not facts.
Mm.
Then I stepped back and I was like, she sent me a text that said something positive. She sent me a private Instagram message that said something positive. I had a personal response that was not factual or
Oh.
accurate at all, even though it felt like a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I'm glad you were able to turn that situation around.
Me too. Me too.
Oh. So here's your homework this week. It's pretty simple, but powerful. Oh, let me say this. It's simple and powerful. How about that? When you notice strong emotions, one, acknowledge them. Two, recognize how they're making you feel. Three, reshape your thoughts. That's it.
And just remember, right? Your feelings are valid and important, and they're not always factual.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, guys. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to join our Facebook community at Develop Confidence in Relationships Through Effective Communication Skills. Yes, I know that was long. And follow us on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. If you like the show, leave a review and share with a friend. We'd really appreciate that. Till next time. When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.